Breighlin was our first child, and we didn't know what we didn't know. We were first-time parents. She was like the perfect child, like overly polite. Oh, I'm sorry, I might have almost bumped into you. She didn't bump into that person, but she might have. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, did you, she was so obedient, so polite, so respectful. So that combined with her articulateness, I'm thinking she's just this perfect, wonderful child.
I was in total denial when my OCD first started manifesting itself. It started out for me as hand washing, for the most part.
When your child, when their hands are really red from washing, you ask all the basic questions like, well, it's winter, it's kind of dry right now, right? My hands are dry, who am I kidding? So you sort of rationalize, right? And that's kind of what we did until it wasn't okay anymore.
Initially, for me, it was, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't know, but then it gets to the point where, your hands are bleeding and you're spending hours in front of a mirror trying to make things even, things like that. And you kind of realize that this is not normal behavior. OCD stands for Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, and it has a couple elements to it. I mean, it's in the name. But the obsession, the rumination, the thought that recurs and recurs, and then the compulsion, which is meant to assuage that thought, is meant to control the anxiety that comes with that thought. So very common would be, and I did this as well, but an obsession with, did I turn the stove off? And then the compulsion would be checking, but then the obsession kind of grows and it turns into, I'm gonna burn the house down if I didn't turn the stove off. And the brain ruminates on that. It's not that you don't know in your logical brain. It's not that you don't, my brain totally knows. Yes, I turned the stove off. Yes, I checked it. Yes, I fit it into that little groove where it clicks and, obviously there's no smell of whatever. Yes, my brain knows that, but my stress system does not. A lot of people think, when they think of OCD, they think of the TV show Monk.
So that means every slice is exactly the same size?
How does it taste?
Who cares? It's a square tomato.
Maybe that's a little too old for everyone here, but the TV show Monk, and organization and perfection, and a lot of times they'll think of the Instagram photos that say, I'm so OCD, but in reality, it's kind of a mess. It's not what you think it is.
She would hear the OCD monster say, you need to do this, you need to wash your hands. And so she would do it. Oh, you didn't do it good enough, you need to wash your hands like this. Breighlin has a type of OCD called scrupulosity. And scrupulosity demands adherence to the highest moral standards.
My hand washing was not because I am afraid of dirt. I love dirt. I can go roll in the dirt and be perfectly happy. I was striving for a moral cleanliness, but in my little young child brain, the only way I could do that was by washing my hands and getting clean, I suppose.
The OCD monster gets locked on the ideas that, if you do that, that would be wrong. That would be morally wrong. You will be unclean. You will be less than worthy. You will not be, basically, you will not be perfect. So before Breighlin could risk that, she was already developing these compulsions, apologizing ahead of time, confessing whenever she felt like she needed to. We thought she was perfect. And what we didn't know was that there was something else driving all of those behaviors.
So one of the other things that I experienced was driving anxiety.
One of Breihlin's OCD obsessive thoughts was, it's called harm OCD, you know. She would not ever want to hurt anybody, and driving was very difficult for her. And she would sometimes take an hour to get home from work, and we knew there was, you know, if she came an hour or 2 hours late from work, we knew that her OCD had kicked in.
Every time I hit a pothole, for me, I was worried that that was a dog, a cat, a human. Any kind of bump freaked me out. Even if I had seen myself go over it, my brain just said that felt like a human. So the compulsion for that, the obsession was, you know, hurting someone with my car, and the compulsion was to go back and check.
So she'd arrive home and we'd kind of go through those steps of first trying to intellectualize it, you know. If you had done this, you know, this and this would have happened. You know what, you would know if you hit somebody, there'd be a dent in your car. You know, you try to rationalize it, you know, and that helps to some degree. But it's an irrational illness, you know. It makes you think in a way that you normally wouldn't think.
I saw her as a mom, more like a caged animal, right? There were places in our house she couldn't step. At first, I didn't know why. You know, why she would shimmy down the hallway with her back against the wall and would only ever face one way. And then she'd hit a certain place in the hallway and she'd take one step here and literally launch into her room where her foot could hit the floor in one spot, and then she'd bound onto her bed.
My brain was keeping track of, I walked through a cloud of cigarette smoke on my way in, therefore I have tracked it here, 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 and here. And in an attempt to control that, for me, the compulsion in that case was to avoid the parts of the hallway where I had walked. If you've ever sat and washed your hands until your shoulders ached, until it was physically trying on your body. So I mean, yes, it is frustrating, but it's kind of beyond that. It's almost, it's just, I don't think frustration would almost be better than the complete and utter panic, if that makes sense. The kind of panic that makes you stay in one position for 12 hours in a car, or, you know, that kind of thing.
I could see, my view was like, my child is being caged by something I don't understand and I don't get.
As a parent, you're frustrated because you just want to make life better for your daughter or your son. And in trying to make it better for them, I mean, we came to the realization that we had to learn something.
First of all, we were trying to figure out, even though Breighlin was a brilliant 8-year-old, we were trying to figure out how to explain it to her and teach her about what was going on. So we chose to compare the OCD to a monster. Not a monster she should fear, not a scary monster, but a hungry monster, one that constantly demanded to be fed. And the way that the monster wanted to be fed was through those behaviors or those rituals, right? That she was told would relieve this stress.
Performing that compulsion does not actually fix the obsession. In fact, it actually strengthens it.
What does feeding do? Feeding a child helps them to grow strong and healthy. Well, that's what it did to a monster. If you feed the monster, it helps it to grow stronger and bigger.
You know, normally thought, action that fixes it, peace, right? And in this case, thought, action that's supposed to fix it, and stronger thought.
So we taught her the way to quiet the monster was to starve it, that would lead to the monster growing weak and tired and eventually quiet.
And the idea is that your body can only hold that response so long, that anxiety response. So the goal is to evoke that response, or when that response is evoked, and then not perform the compulsion.
But starving the monster is tough. For Breighlin, that meant suffering through all of that anxiety and that excruciating fight or flight that made her feel like she was in a life or death situation.
I think in the beginning, when you start starving the monster, you just have to kind of live with it. In those moments, I could still kind of function, but it would almost be non-functioning because I was like a deer in the headlights, kind of, oh no, I need to do this, no.
Then it would become a time of, okay, let's just wait an hour before you go out and check, and then let's wait 15 minutes longer. And even if she didn't make it through that hour and a half, at least, she would put it off a little bit longer. That anxiety would be able to decrease to some extent, and allow her to get better control of that.
So in increments, with hand washing, just because I gave into it 2 or 3 times, that could be an improvement over 100 times. For me, that was a huge breakthrough. It really helped because eventually my body could not, I was exhausted, but my body could not freak out about it anymore. It does work. The whole idea of not feeding into that monster of an obsession, and weakening it.
So one of the things we explained to Breighlin about the OCD being a monster was the monster loved those quiet, dark places, right? And it wanted her to hide it, right? Because the more it could hide it, the more she would hide it, the more control, the more that monster could ask for. And it's the same way with Stigma today. Stigma loves the dark, quiet corners, right? Where we don't call it out and we don't address it and we aren't knowledgeable and don't have a good understanding of it.
And people don't get help because of the stigma that we talked about. They're in denial. It's like, I don't want to admit I have this problem. So 60% of the people who have mental illness won't seek any kind of help for that.
I think the biggest barrier to my treatment was the stigma. And not in the beginning from other people, but from myself. So for me, as a kid, thinking on that, I'm not weak, I am not crazy, I'm not messed up. I was so adamant that there was, nothing wrong with me.
As a society, I think we're getting better at that. We're recognizing that as a problem that is not being seen because of the stigma that's associated with it.